Cook County Jail holds over 5,000 inmates at any given time. But the most dangerous thing inside isn't the prisoners. It's who controls them. Because in this jail, gang wars don't just happen. They run everything. Welcome to Cook County Jail, where the guards don't run the system. The gangs do. Title: Welcome to Cook County, where gang wars control everything. Cook County Jail holds more than 5,000 inmates at any given time. On paper, it's one of the largest jail systems in the United States. But size isn't what makes it dangerous. What makes it dangerous is control. Because inside these concrete walls on Chicago's South Side, power doesn't always belong to the guards. According to multiple inmate accounts and investigative reports, control shifts, often silently, to organized groups operating behind the scenes. Gangs. And when that control slips, even for a moment, the consequences aren't minor. They're immediate. And they're violent. Most people imagine jail as a place where rules are strict, movements are monitored, and authority is absolute. But Cook County doesn't always follow that script. There are units where tensions build quietly for days. Small disputes, over territory, respect, or affiliation, can escalate without warning. What starts as a conversation can turn into something far more serious in seconds. And when it does, response time matters. But here's the problem. There are documented cases and reports suggesting that staffing shortages, overcrowding, and internal coordination challenges can delay intervention. In those moments, control doesn't just weaken, it disappears. For the people inside, that changes everything. Because survival in a place like this isn't just about following rules. It's about understanding the system behind the system. The Cook County Jail complex isn't a single building. It's a network. Multiple divisions, housing units, corridors, and controlled zones. Each section operates under strict protocols, but conditions can vary depending on where you are placed. Some units are quieter. Others are known for volatility. And placement isn't always predictable. According to public records and reporting, inmate classification is designed to separate individuals based on risk level, charges, and behavioral history. But with thousands of inmates moving through the system, maintaining perfect separation becomes increasingly difficult. And when classification fails, lines blur. Individuals who shouldn't interact do. Groups that are meant to be separated aren't. And that's where patterns begin to form. Because in environments where structure weakens, informal systems take over. Inside Cook County, those systems can revolve around alliances. To understand how that works, you have to look at what incarceration does psychologically. When individuals are placed in high-stress, high-density environments, behavior changes. Trust becomes limited. Decisions become strategic. And identity, especially group identity, becomes a form of protection. In many cases, inmates align themselves based on familiarity, background, or perceived safety. But in certain environments, those alignments evolve into something more structured, more organized, more powerful. And according to multiple investigative insights, Cook County has experienced periods where those structures influence daily life inside specific units. This doesn't mean chaos exists everywhere at all times. But it does mean that control can shift, depending on timing, staffing, and circumstance. There have been documented incidents over the years, altercations, coordinated conflicts, and internal disturbances, that point to deeper underlying tensions. Not random, not isolated, but connected. And when these incidents happen, they reveal something critical. They reveal how quickly order can be challenged. Because in a facility of this scale, maintaining total control requires constant balance. Surveillance, staffing, communication, it all has to function perfectly. But perfection isn't always possible. And then there's overcrowding. At various points in its history, Cook County Jail has faced capacity pressure. When more individuals are housed than the system was designed for, strain builds across every level. Resources stretch thinner. Movement becomes harder to manage. Tensions rise. And in confined environments, tension doesn't stay contained. It spreads. But here's where things become more complicated. Because not all influence inside a jail is visible. Some of it operates quietly. Through communication networks, reputation, and hierarchy. According to former inmates and investigative reporting, there are moments where decisions, who shares space, who avoids conflict, who asserts dominance, aren't always spontaneous. They're influenced, directed, sometimes even anticipated. And that creates a different kind of environment. One where understanding the dynamics matters just as much as following the rules. For someone entering Cook County Jail for the first time, none of this is obvious. What they see initially is structure, processing, intake, assignment, Everything appears controlled, organized, routine. But that's only the surface. Because beneath that routine there are layers, unwritten rules, unspoken signals, and systems that don't exist in official manuals, but are understood by those who've been there long enough. So the question becomes, how much of what happens inside Cook County is actually controlled by the institution, and how much is influenced by the people within it? Because if influence shifts, even temporarily, it changes the reality of daily life. It changes how conflicts start, how they escalate, and how they end. And then there are the moments that don't make headlines, the near misses, the tensions that almost turn into something worse, the situations that are contained just in time. Those moments don't get documented the same way, but they matter, because they show how close the system can come to breaking. In facilities like this, control isn't just about authority, it's about timing, presence, and the ability to respond before something escalates beyond containment. When that balance holds, the system works, but when it doesn't, the consequences can unfold fast. And that leads to a deeper question, not just about Cook County, but about the system itself. What happens when an institution designed to maintain order is placed under continuous pressure, from overcrowding, limited resources, and internal dynamics that don't always follow official rules? What happens when control isn't constant, but conditional? Because inside Cook County Jail there have been moments, documented, reported, and remembered, where that question stops being theoretical and becomes real. And in Chapter 2, we're going inside those moments, the incidents, the patterns, and the specific events that reveal what really happens when control slips, and who takes over when it does. The escalation. The reality of Cook County Jail doesn't reveal itself all at once. It builds, slowly, quietly, then all at once. Because the most critical moments inside the facility are not the ones you see coming. They're the ones that develop beneath the surface, through tension, miscommunication, and shifting control. In large correctional facilities, incidents are often described in official terms: altercations, disturbances, use of force. But those words rarely capture what actually leads up to them. Because before anything happens, there are signals, subtle changes in behavior, unusual movement patterns, silence in places that are usually loud, or the opposite, sudden noise in places that should be controlled. According to correctional reporting and institutional analyses, these signals can indicate rising tension within specific units. And in Cook County Jail, those signals have, at times, preceded coordinated conflicts. One of the defining challenges of managing a facility this large is visibility. Not just physical visibility through cameras and patrols, but situational awareness. Knowing what's about to happen, before it happens. Because once something begins inside a confined space, response options narrow quickly. There have been multiple documented incidents over the years where violence escalated rapidly within housing divisions. In some cases, these incidents involved small groups. In others, they spread across sections before containment measures were fully implemented. Reports often point to contributing factors: overcrowding, limited staffing during certain shifts, and communication delays between units. Individually, each factor is manageable. Together, they create pressure points, and pressure points are where systems are tested. In environments like Cook County Jail, time becomes the most critical variable. Seconds matter. Because once a situation escalates beyond verbal control, it shifts into physical risk, for both inmates and staff. But here's where escalation becomes more complex. Because not every incident is spontaneous. Some are reactive. Others appear coordinated. According to investigative reporting and former inmate accounts, there have been patterns suggesting that certain conflicts are not entirely random. They follow sequences, build-ups, triggers, and once triggered they move fast. This is where the concept of influence becomes critical. Inside a structured environment, influence isn't always visible. It operates through reputation, through communication, through presence, and in some cases through hierarchy. When influence consolidates within groups, it changes how situations unfold. Disputes are no longer just between individuals, they become collective. And collective conflict is significantly harder to contain. There have been periods in Cook County Jail's history where internal tensions aligned with external dynamics. Meaning what happens outside, on the streets between rival groups, can carry over inside. And when it does, the jail doesn't operate in isolation anymore. It becomes an extension of those conflicts. That's when the environment shifts. Because now, it's not just about maintaining order within a facility. It's about managing overlapping systems of conflict. Correctional officers are trained for control, de-escalation, and response. But even with training, the scale of Cook County Jail presents challenges. Thousands of inmates, multiple divisions, constant movement. No system operates without limits. And those limits are most visible during peak stress moments. When multiple incidents occur close together. When resources are stretched. When response teams are required in more than one place at once. In those moments, prioritization becomes necessary. And prioritization means not everything can be addressed immediately. This is where escalation becomes dangerous. Because delay, even brief, can allow situations to expand. A single conflict can draw in others. Tensions can spread across a unit. And control becomes harder to re-establish. But not all escalation is physical. Some of it is psychological. Living in an environment where tension can rise at any moment changes behavior. Individuals become more alert, more reactive, more cautious. Decisions are made faster. Sometimes without full information. And that's where mistakes happen. A misinterpreted look. A misunderstood comment. An assumption about intent. In high-pressure environments, small moments can carry disproportionate weight. And when those moments intersect with existing tensions, escalation follows. There are also structural challenges. Movement between units, shared spaces, limited separation during certain processes. Each interaction point is a potential flashpoint. Correctional systems are designed to minimize these risks. But in high-density facilities, elimination isn't always possible. Only management. And management requires consistency. Because inconsistency creates opportunity. Opportunity for conflict. Opportunity for influence. Opportunity for control to shift. Over time, patterns begin to emerge. Certain areas become known for volatility. Certain times of day carry higher risk. Certain dynamics repeat. And once patterns are recognized, they can be used, either to prevent escalation or to anticipate it. According to Institutional Insights, one of the most difficult aspects of maintaining order is unpredictability. Because even when patterns exist, they don't always repeat the same way. Variables change. People change. Circumstances change. And that means every day inside Cook County Jail carries a degree of uncertainty. But there's one factor that consistently increases risk. When formal control weakens, and informal systems strengthen. Because at that point, authority is no longer absolute. Shared. Contested. Sometimes even challenged. And that's when escalation reaches its peak. There have been incidents, documented in reports and media coverage, where disturbances required significant intervention to contain. Lockdowns. Unit restrictions. Emergency response protocols. These measures restore order. But they also reveal something important. They reveal that control is not constant. It has to be maintained, reinforced, re-established. And every time it slips, even briefly, the system is tested again. So the question becomes more urgent. Not just if control can be maintained, but how often it's challenged. And what happens in the moments between those challenges. Because those moments are where the real story is. And in Chapter 3, we go deeper into how control is restored. What actually determines who holds power inside. And the reality most people never see, the long-term impact on those who live through it. The revelation. Control inside a place like Cook County Jail is not a fixed state. It's a process, maintained moment by moment, tested constantly, and, at times, taken for granted, until something forces it back into focus. Because the question isn't whether control exists. It's who holds it, and when. By the time a situation escalates inside the jail, the response is already in motion. Correctional officers follow established protocols. Containment, separation, lockdown if necessary. Specialized teams may be deployed. Movement is restricted. Communication channels activate across divisions. From the outside it looks structured, precise, effective. And in many cases, it is. But what these responses reveal isn't just the strength of the system. They reveal its limits. Because every intervention is reactive. It happens after something begins. After tension reaches a breaking point. After control is challenged. And that distinction matters. Because it means the real balance of power inside Cook County Jail isn't defined during calm moments. It's defined in the seconds when something goes wrong. When officers regain control of a unit, the immediate goal is stability. Separate individuals. Restore order. Prevent further escalation. And then, just as quickly as it began, the visible crisis ends. But the underlying dynamics don't disappear. They reset. According to Correctional Insights and Institutional Reporting, many facilities operate in cycles. Tension builds. An incident occurs. Control is re-established. Then the process begins again. And in large, high-density environments, those cycles can repeat more frequently. Not because the system fails entirely, but because pressure never fully disappears. Overcrowding, resource limitations, and the complexity of managing thousands of individuals ensure that the system is always under strain, always adjusting, always responding. But here's where the deeper reality emerges. Because while official control is restored after each incident, informal influence doesn't vanish with it. It adapts. The same networks that shape behavior during moments of instability don't simply dissolve. They shift, reorganize, and that creates a dual-layer environment. One layer is visible, rules, schedules, enforcement. The other is less visible, relationships, reputations, and influence. For those inside, understanding both layers is critical. Because survival isn't just about following official rules. It's about recognizing the environment as it actually exists. This is what most people on the outside never see. They see headlines, statistics, official statements. But they don't see the day-to-day reality of navigating a system where control can feel absolute one moment and uncertain the next. They don't see how quickly situations can change, how fast decisions have to be made, how small actions can carry significant consequences. And they don't see the long-term impact. Because living in an environment defined by constant tension doesn't just affect behavior in the moment. It changes how people think, how they respond, how they carry that experience with them, even after they leave. According to psychological and correctional studies, prolonged exposure to high-stress institutional environments can lead to heightened alertness, difficulty trusting others, and long-term behavioral adaptation. In simple terms, you don't just experience the system. You adapt to it. And adaptation comes with a cost. For some, that cost is psychological. For others, it's social. And for many, it shapes how they reintegrate into the outside world. But the system itself continues. New inmates arrive. Others leave. The environment resets, but the structure remains. And with it, the same underlying question persists. Can total control ever truly exist in a place like this? Because Cook County Jail is not just a building. It's a system under constant pressure. A system balancing order and instability, authority and influence, structure and unpredictability. And that balance is never permanent. It shifts, day by day, moment by moment. Sometimes the system holds perfectly. Everything functions as designed. Other times, it's tested. And in those moments, the reality becomes clear. Control isn't something you establish once. It's something you fight to maintain. Every day. And inside Cook County Jail, that fight never really ends. If you want to understand how systems like this operate beyond the surface, real stories, real investigations, and the hidden dynamics most people never see, subscribe now. Because this is just one facility. And there are many more stories like this.